And we've got a really special guest today, a guest from Paraguay, Paul. He lives there and he actually has a lot of things to say about Paraguay. And we're going to be talking about citizenship, residency in Paraguay, and the lifestyle. Things are changing very, very fast. And everyone needs a Plan B. And that's how Paul's business is actually called Plan B Paraguay. You will see as we talk that actually having a second residency or passport offers you more than just a paper. It offers safety, a low tax environment, and even a safe place to live. So I'm going to leave Paul to introduce himself, and we're going to kickstart the show about Paraguay. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, hey guys, my name is Paul from Plan B Paraguay. I'm originally Australian. My business partner and I, a fellow Australian, you could say, escaped Australia just over 2 years ago during the pretty harsh coronavirus lockdown and all the nonsense with that. And we were both just looking for a country with, more freedom, more opportunity, and just a better, a better lifestyle. And we think we found it in Paraguay.
That sounds fantastic. And why was it Paraguay? Why did you consider first, and why did you end up to Paraguay?
Yeah, right. So honestly, originally it wasn't first Paraguay. In early 2020 or so, I was looking at different options. And back then, Panama was the main option for a lot of people, especially if you had an online business. It was a very favorable destination to go to. And what had happened, unfortunately, is that Panama had changed the rules for their residency visa, and they made it much harder to obtain. So because of that, I went online, I purchased a consultation with a coach. He went through all my options, and then he started talking about this country called Paraguay, which I never really heard about before. And I looked into it, and it ticked all the boxes in what I was looking for. And one thing led to another, and I moved here.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Also, I don't know too much about Paraguay, just that it rhymes with Uruguay, but they're very different.
Right.
And there's been a lot of hype around Paraguay lately, and that's why you're here with us, just to tell us a few things about, first of all, the passport and the citizenship. So I'd like to talk a bit about what's the process of getting a citizenship in Paraguay and the passport, obviously, and also what are the requirements, how harsh is it, and what kind of citizens can apply with their first passport.
Right. So, well, let's answer your last question first. So it's all sequential. So, what citizens of what passports can get the Paraguayan passport? So, how Paraguay works is for countries that Paraguay lets you get a visa to travel to, or a visa free, effectively, it's quite easy. Yeah. So, if you just Google visas for Paraguay, you'll see the list of countries there. Now, unfortunately, if your country isn't on the list, you will have to go through a Paraguayan embassy to get a visa. And that can be quite a difficult process. There's lots of requirements. So generally with people from those countries, it's a little bit harder. So, but yeah, long story short, most obviously Western developed countries, Europe, America, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, UK, those are the usual countries that will have no problem. Now, in regards to getting the citizenship, there's basically a few different requirements you have to meet. So the first is you have to have had your residency in Paraguay for 3 years. During that time, you've had to spend a minimum of 6 months a year living in Paraguay. They want you to, show that you've had some sort of business or some sort of job in Paraguay. So, you're economically active. And then you'll need to complete a basic Spanish and Paraguayan culture test as well. Okay. Once you've reached those requirements, you'll be able to put your submission in for a citizenship.
Okay, that sounds pretty easy, but it can't be really that easy. So what would you say are the main hurdles in your experience with your own clients? Like what would be the main issues that arise in the process so people can kind of prepare for them?
Yeah, I think sometimes you can submit your application, but it could just be sitting on a government officer's desk for a while. So I think it helps to have a good lawyer in regards to that, to help you with the process and just make sure everything's running smoothly. So I would definitely recommend that. But yeah, just meeting the requirements, unfortunately, doesn't automatically mean you'll get citizenship.
All right, interesting. Okay, and basically you have to go through residency first, and then after you get the permanent residency, you have to apply for citizenship or naturalization. Is that true?
Well, yeah, I mean, you don't have to, it's optional, but that's right.
Okay.
The usual timeline, you could say, is you have 2 years of temporary residency.
Okay.
Once those 2 years up, you can extend it to permanent residencies, which effectively last in 10-year blocks. And then after those 3 years, if you'd like to, you can also apply for the citizenship.
Okay, so it's somehow part of the residency, and you have to do it at one point, the citizenship.
Yeah, that's right. The citizenship obviously is completely optional. Most people don't even bother because they're happy with their passport, and you get almost all the, I guess, advantages of a citizenship through the residency. But yeah, if you did want to do it, it'd be at that 3-year mark.
Okay, and now your discussion led me very interestingly into a question about the power of the passport and why would people want the Paraguayan passport. I think that's the big question. So maybe you can tell us about the advantage of holding the passport, and also maybe the disadvantages. Like, is there a problem if you go with a Paraguayan passport in some countries?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and it's a good question. So obviously the how useful the Paraguayan passport is depends on the current passports you have. In general, like, don't quote me, but last time I checked, it was roughly 145 countries you have visa-free access to. So yeah, it's not as powerful as, say, a European or American passport or something like that, but it's still quite a good passport that does have visa-free access to Europe, which is quite useful, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. So to get into Europe, I guess for a lot of maybe South Americans or people from Africa, which don't have like really strong passport, would be a really nice entry gate to Europe, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It will open that much easier access to you. Sure. So that's in terms of like the access of the passport.
Exactly.
Okay? Then we got to consider the other benefits. The first is obviously diversification. So obviously we're Plan B, and so we are concerned about the direction of the world in many different countries, right? And a lot of our clients are. And so they need a backup, right? So it might be that at some stage they need to leave their country and potentially they need to leave their passport. And if they only have one passport, they can't do that, right? You usually need to have a second passport to renounce or get rid of your first passport. So this is merely, I like to call it, a break glass in case of emergency passport or residency. If things are not going good at home, you can just escape and you have this backup place that you can stay and a backup passport you can use to travel.
It does make sense. It does make sense. Sorry to interrupt there, but it does make sense in a world where we've got conflicts left and right, and rules are changing more often than I would say 10 years ago in terms of visas, residency. Now UK has closed as well, and EU wants to put a EU visa for all the British people and Americans that they have to apply from next year or in 2 years. So things are changing a bit, and I believe diversification, as you're saying, is key to a better life, a backup plan, but also peace of mind.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more, and I almost feel like in the future, the way the world's going is it's almost going to be a never-ending game of musical chairs.
Yeah, and the cat and mouse game between countries and visas and passports, probably.
Exactly, yeah. So you always want to, even if you don't necessarily want to live in that country this minute, grab a few residencies, especially the ones like Paraguay that are more easier to obtain, because you might need it one day. This country that you're in, which is great today, 5-10 years, it might not be that way. So you're going to need an option.
Agree. Unfortunately, Paul, we've seen that with Australia, which seemed paradise a few years ago, and people were literally locked in their region. So Plan B would have worked there amazingly at that time. And I think people learned the lesson, hopefully. And I myself met a lot of Australians who are doing that at the moment, and they don't want to go back to Australia anytime soon.
Yeah, it's a tough topic for me because I feel mixed emotions, right? Obviously, I have a great fondness for my country, but I am resentful that, in my city, Melbourne, we had, lockdowns on and off for 18 months. And there were times in that where we couldn't leave our house for more than 2 hours a day. That sounds like something that's in a prison where you're allowed to have sun for 2 hours a day. That was more or less what the rules were of the government, the state government. So, yeah, and if they've done it once, they've shown it's possible. I'm not saying it's going to happen again anytime soon, but I'm saying we've seen what governments can do, So, yeah, it's good to have options.
Yeah, for all of us, unfortunately. Yeah, indeed. That makes sense, Paul. And I think definitely Paraguay is one of the best options on the market. Again, depending on your situation and the other passport you have, the first passport, and your plan for life in general. I would say, from my experience and from talking to our community, some people have a Paraguayan passport or residency. Some others go for the UAE. Some others go for Cyprus, and so on. So there are not so many passports, I would say, that are easy to get. Paraguay is one of the easiest, so to say. However, it's good we have options at the moment, and that's why you're here to tell us more about Paraguay. So thank you for that.
I just wanted to add one more, if I could, Andrew. I just want to add one more point in regards to the passports, and this is specifically applies to US citizens. So as a US citizen, you're never going to be able to get the full tax benefits as a citizen of almost any other country in the world, unfortunately, until you renounce that passport. You're effectively chained to the US government via that passport. And the only way to, really get financial freedom in a way and live where you want to, pay the types of taxes you want to, is to renounce that passport. And you can only do that if you've obtained a secondary passport.
Correct. That's very important to mention, because I think a lot of people know that, but I'm not sure if a lot of Americans are aware that their passport is very restrictive, basically, and they need an extra plan, or they need to do some extra steps to get the second one and renounce to the American one, which is it is a process indeed. Yeah. Cool, Paul. How about are there any limitations, like investment criteria for the Paraguayan passport and residency? Do you need a special amount in your bank account to prove when you apply, and do you need a minimum income per month? What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as of last year, the rules were different. So last year, you used to need to invest the equivalent of roughly $5,000. But what's funny, it wasn't $5,000. It was 36 months of minimum wage in Paraguay. So that gives you an idea of maybe how cheap things are here, if they think $5,000 is going to last you 3 years. I think that's a bit optimistic. But they've since scrapped that rule. So that's no longer a requirement. Really, the only requirements these days are, you will need a clean criminal record. You're going to need your birth certificate, marriage certificate if you're married, and basically, a visa and a passport with 6 months expiry. If you have all those things, you can effectively get a residency in Paraguay.
And you have to come in the country, go to the office, I guess, with the solicitor or the consultant, and then what's next after that?
Yeah, so that's right. So you'll go to Asuncion, the capital. We like to have people here for a week. Usually we only need them for 2 days. Yeah, you'll go to different government appointments. It's stuff like, fingerprints, having your photo taken, signing documents, just the usual legal stuff. Yeah. And then once you submit all your documents, then you'll wait. Generally it's 2 to 3 months is what you'll find. And then after that, you'll have your residency card and the cedula. So just quickly, the cedula is what most Latin countries call their national ID card. And that's basically what you use, to sort of do everything in Paraguay.
I think it's similar to Spain. I think Spain has one as well when you get your...
okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's the same rule, more or less. All right, that makes sense. And then I guess you have to stay, as you said, in the country 180 days minimum per year to keep the residency alive, which will then transform into something more.
Yeah, so let's go over that, because there's a little bit of confusion there. So we need to talk about what you need to maintain the residency and what you need to apply for citizenship. So to maintain the residency is much simpler. There's no minimum time in country requirement for the temporary residency, which is the first 2 years. You can get it, then you can leave, come back in 2 years, extend it. When you have the permanent residency, they want you to be in Paraguay for 1 day a year. So it's only 1 day a year for that one.
Yeah.
Now, if you want the citizenship, they say it's the 6 months a year. So that's, I guess, a more, a greater time you need in Paraguay. But to merely maintain.
Sorry, Paul, that's 180 days in that 2 to 3 year period, or since you got the first time residency?
Right. So it's 6 months a year per calendar year for the citizenship.
All right. So in theory, you would have to be in the country within the 3 years. You'd have to be there for about 1.5 years.
That's what the time investment would be, yeah, to meet those requirements.
All right. However, the residency will give you a big advantage, and I was about to mention that already, which is the tax breaks, I guess. And I think to be honest, from what I've heard and read, a lot of people are going crazy about Paraguay because they offer really low tax, or in some cases no tax. You have to tell us, and I think that's the main reason why people go for it. So let's talk a bit about the tax residency breaks. What does it mean? What do you get? And what do you have to do to keep them, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, let's go through it. So Paraguay is what's known as a territorial tax country. So that is basically a country that only taxes, income or, money that is earned within the territory of Paraguay.
Right.
So the majority of our clients are digital nomads. They have an online business. They perhaps work for a company overseas. Therefore, the money they are earning is not sourced in Paraguay. For that reason, they don't have to pay tax on that particular income. If you were to work and offer services in Paraguay, it gets up to 10%, which is still quite low. So it's not true that there's no taxes in Paraguay, but if you are a certain type of person, which I'm sure many of your watchers are, it can be. So what do you need to get that advantage? So you need to obviously get a Paraguayan tax number, which you can get once you have the residency, and you need to set up your life in Paraguay. So that's usually stuff like you need to get an address, utility bills, bank accounts and all that to really prove and that Paraguay is your main base, your main home. Now, here's what's interesting though with the whole Paraguayan tax thing. There's usually never any problems from the Paraguayan government, right? They're quite friendly, they're quite understanding of people working in Paraguay. If there's ever going to be problems, it's the country that you're leaving. Yeah. So each country has different rules on what you need to do to leave the tax residency that you're in. So I always recommend to clients, yes, we can absolutely help you with the Paraguayan side of things, set you up here, but you need to make sure you tick all those boxes so that whatever country you're leaving doesn't think you still owe them taxes. Now, in general, this is stuff like, spending under a certain amount of days per year in the country, not having lots of assets or bank accounts or ties to the country. So when you go to a place like Paraguay, you go through a process, you can think of it as burning your bridges, where you're basically cutting all the ties to your old residency and tax residency and creating those again in Paraguay.
That's definitely important because from our discussions with some of our community, a lot of people are not doing that. So they kind of travel around without noticing the authorities, notifying the authorities, or talking to solicitors to kind of unplug from one system, one residency, and then move to another, or at least work with like 2 or 3 residency in parallel and make sure that everything is aligned and they get all the benefits from all 2 or 3 or how many they have. So yes, indeed, this is true. This is what I've heard as well. It's very important to make sure that you kind of clear your situation in the other residencies that you have, so you can have a stress-free residency in Paraguay if you plan to use that as well. So that's very interesting. And Paul, in regards to the tax, you said that Paraguay doesn't tax income that's coming from outside Paraguay. So in theory, this residency would be perfect for people who have online businesses and they do not live in Paraguay, but they charge people online for their services, either products or services online, and the money are flowing into an entity, a business entity in another country. However, the person is registered in Paraguay and they have their tax residency there. Does it make sense?
That's correct. Yeah, that's exactly how, I'd say 95% of my clients do it.
And it is very important also to mention that probably some of your clients and people in general shouldn't expect to set up the business in Paraguay, but they could have a business in the US or in the UK or in other countries, but they would have their own tax residence in Paraguay and they would work together to make tax more efficient, right?
Exactly right. So, and this goes to what, I'm sure you've heard the term flag theory, where you set up different parts of your life in different countries. So generally, jurisdictions like the US with the LLC is a much better business entity to use than setting up a business in Paraguay for stuff like banking and also, payment processing, getting your Stripe, getting all that. So yeah, almost all of our clients, they usually have a US LLC is how they do it. And like you said, so yes, your tax home is in Paraguay. Probably your physical home where you're spending a decent amount of time is also in Paraguay, but your businesses, your bank accounts, they're whatever country is going to treat you best. So it's usually places like the US, for example.
Fair enough. I mean, US is renowned for the good banking system, obviously stability, and also raising money, raising funds. So I think it makes sense to have at least one company there for the future, especially if you plan to grow it and transform it into a serious business. So that's great to hear. But talking about banks and the banking system, Paul, so what can you tell us about the banking system in Paraguay? Because I've heard different opinions on that, and how does it compare to, I don't know, maybe like a British or UAE or European banking system?
Yeah, so it's a good question. And so if I would say, if Paraguay had a weakness, it would be the banking, right? And so what it looks like is, I'll give you a little story. This is my interpretation of what's happened. So, a few years ago, basically the US accused Paraguay of money laundering and all this stuff, right? And effectively what they did is they put very harsh banking restrictions that Paraguay has to follow, or the US said they're going to cut them off from the SWIFT system, right?
Yeah.
So the banks here are kind of chained to these very strict like KYC, know your customer, source of funds rules. So what this looks like as a user like us is in Paraguay for the majority of banks, before they know you and they really trust you, if you put in more than $1,000 at a time into a bank account here, they're going to ask you to prove the source of funds, So, which can be frustrating. So you have to, your invoice, your payslip, whatever, and they'll consistently do that. Then the other thing is some sources of funds that are completely legitimate in other parts of the world, Paraguayan banks won't accept. So for example, I have a little bit of cryptocurrency. I can't just, sell my cryptocurrency at an exchange like Binance and then transfer the US dollars into the banks here. The banks here won't accept crypto as a source of funds.
You have to go through a bank as well, and then from bank to bank, I guess.
Well, even though, even if I went from another bank first and then into Paraguayan bank, they're still going to say, "Can you prove where this money came from?"
Yeah.
And if I show, a transaction on a crypto exchange, they're not going to accept the transfer.
Yeah.
So for that reason, for like big stuff, international stuff, I recommend, like I said, using international bank is what I do. It's what my clients do for Paraguay. For local stuff, paying bills, paying your rent, going out for dinner, Paraguayan stuff, sure, have a Paraguayan bank account. But I wouldn't, it's not a Switzerland, it's not a UAE, it's not a Panama.
Where you can move big amounts of money very fast and very quick. Yeah.
Exactly.
Fair enough. So I guess for like your regular debit card or credit card there, doing groceries and going to restaurants like $1,000 to $2,000 a month, that shouldn't be a problem for running those money through a Paraguayan bank. So basically just living there, that shouldn't be a problem, should it?
Yeah, and also you're right. It won't be a problem. And what a lot of people do is this is how silly it is right here. Like you can basically have two bank accounts, three, four bank accounts, put 1,000 in this one, 1,000 in this one, 1,000 in this one. So every month, you stock up your 1,000, so you're not triggering any red flags, and then you just live your life.
Can people, how is cash over there? Is cash accepted widely?
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
it's a good question. So what I really like about Paraguay is that, you know, roughly 50% of the population is unbanked here. Yeah, so that
Okay.
gives you an idea how much even Paraguayans like the banks here. And so a large percentage of commerce of trade here is completely cash based. Now, this is great for privacy. This is great for personal liberty. And should the powers that be try to put in a government-backed cryptocurrency that everyone has to follow, right? Paraguayans don't even know a lot of them don't even use like a regular bank. There's no way they're going to adopt some, crazy CBDC. Yeah, so I feel that Paraguay is very resistant to any of that because it is such a cash-based society.
That makes sense. Yeah, and how about using foreign cards there from European or American banks? Do they accept those type of cards in Paraguay if you have to?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I do, for example, I have my personal banking. My main one's based overseas. I just put the card on my phone, and then I just tap and pay with my phone. It's
Easy,
very easy.
easy and nice. That sounds good. That sounds really good, Paul. So how would you compare then? What would you say is like the main advantage of Paraguayan residency or citizenship vs a UAE one? I guess there are pros and cons depending on your situation again. So I don't think there is a perfect citizenship or residency. You have
Yeah.
to work with all of them, or you have to work with a few to create a lifestyle, basically. Well, what would you say are the main benefits of a Paraguayan residency overall?
Yeah, but well, I guess we can contrast it against places like the UAE. So I guess the easiest way to sum it is, unless you're, some sheik or whatever, in the UAE, you're a small fish, a small fish in a big pond.
Yeah,
Um,
but
and
it's very expensive. Lifestyle is very expensive there. Everyone knows.
exactly, it's very expensive. If you're a single guy, you're competing with guys with like Ferraris and all that stuff. And yeah, you're always going to be sort of like, I guess, second class, and your expenses are going to be so much more.
Yeah,
Here in Paraguay, even if you're earning, I don't know, like even like 30K a year, let's say US, you're like in the top, 5% plus of earners and people in society. So it just affords you a very different life. You can have the best of Paraguay. So you can eat out every night of the week. You can live in the best places. You're very competitive on the dating market. You can afford to buy houses here. And so in that regard, it's very different. Also, there's not, it's a very flashy lifestyle in Dubai. I feel you have to have the watch and everything to sort of be anyone. Here, you can just sort of be more of a normal person, and that's completely acceptable.
from what I've seen on your Twitter,
So that's
Paul,
what I'd say about
yeah, sorry. Just to add something there, from what I've seen on your
that.
amazing Twitter channel, I think Paraguay seems to me like a place where you can actually enjoy life. It's full of nature. It's a simple place. You've got
Mm.
some sophisticated restaurants and amenities and things like that. However, the lifestyle is one of enjoyment and fulfillment, I believe, compared to other places in the world.
I think that's a very accurate observation. I find in general Paraguayans, they're more sort of in the moment. They're more not worrying about acting cool or who's looking at them. They just kind of seem to be very much themselves, authentic, enjoying life. And what's great when you hear, as humans, we pick up on the vibes of people
Right.
around us.
And the weather.
So when I first came here, I was a bit more neurotic, type A, stressed out. And when everyone's so calm and relaxed, you can't help but sort of just like relax and let your guard down a bit more and just sort of embody that more, which I really like.
Yeah, I think we reached the most important point of our conversation, from my point of view at least, and that's the lifestyle in Paraguay. I love traveling. I guess you too, but for me, yeah, traveling is fantastic, and I've been to Paraguay a while ago. I think it changed a lot. I'm looking forward to come back, but I want to hear more from you about how is a daily life in Paraguay, how people live there. I want to know a few things about safety and how well connected is it? Like how do you get to Paraguay from South America and from Europe?
Okay, sure. So there's a few questions there. So in regards to well connected, I think there's maybe 10 direct routes. So yeah, I mean, we're almost right down the bottom at South America down here. Yeah. So it's not a global hub for travel.
Yeah.
I'll say that. So, but most people come in through Sao Paulo, Miami. You can come in through Madrid. They're kind of the main routes to get here. So there's that answer. I think you were asking about the people. Is that correct? Or
Yeah, I'm asking about the lifestyle, the people, the vibe in
right?
Asunción, and also what's else other than Asunción in Paraguay.
Yeah. So Asuncion to me feels like a place that for me it was kind of like the ugly girl that's just realized she's pretty, and now she's like flourishing. So there's a lot of people coming here. Like in 90% of the city, it's still developing world.
Yeah.
The roads aren't great. It's a little bit haphazard. But then there's these like beautiful new developments that are like popping out, that are just like world class. And then you're seeing that more and more development as people start to come here. So there's more and more stuff to do. But there's still it's still kind of like maybe a small city vibe. There's only 2 million people that live here, right?
Yeah.
So you can still drive your car anywhere and get a parking spot. You're not stuck in traffic all day. The air isn't polluted because it's quite green here as well. And so yeah, it's not overwhelming like a huge city of like 5 million people or something like that. So it's still quite almost like a country town type feel here. Day to day, yeah. Most expats, there's a place called Paseo La Galleria. It's kind of the main shopping center here, and most expats live around there, where everything's in walking distance. Everything's quite nice and new. So and yeah, it's like you said, it's a very easy lifestyle. You can sort of walk everywhere or just catch an Uber quite easily if you want to. Good restaurants, good shopping, friendly people.
Well, as a general rule, I guess you need a car almost everywhere if you're not in that area, right?
See, I mean, it depends, right? So I don't own a car, and the reason is, if you're in that area, yes, and then like an Uber's about what $3 on average for
Yeah.
about a 25-minute drive, so it's not that expensive to not have a car. If you're in the outer areas or in rural areas, absolutely you need a car. The thing about Paraguay, right, is that there's a lot of freedom here, and there's not much regulations, and that also applies to how people drive. So there'll be an adjustment period to learning how to drive a car here, and it might take some bravery at first. And I haven't completely committed to that just yet.
Is it safe to couples to walk in the night to go out and have a drink after 12 o'clock? Do you have to be from taxi to taxi like in Mexico City? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Yeah, that's a good question. So they say on average, Paraguay is the third safest country in South America. Only they say Uruguay and Chile usually beat it. So
That's
yeah,
already pretty good. Yeah.
yeah. So it's not like I don't know, Japan or I don't know, some super safe third world country, but it's safe for a South American country. So to give you some examples, in the area where most of the expats are, yeah, I'll go in the middle of the night talking on the phone. Not worried that someone on a motorcycle is going to come attack me. When I'm at a restaurant, I'm happy to leave my phone just sitting on the table, and I'm not worried someone's going to snatch it like other countries. Or when I'm in a taxi, I'm happy to have the window down, talking on my phone, playing on my phone, oblivious. It's not like when I was in Colombia, the taxi driver's like, "Oh, put the window up, someone's going to get you."
Yes.
When I've been to other parts of South America, there's almost like you feel like a danger or like a desperation in the air, like things aren't quite
Yes,
safe
it's
where you are.
eerie. Yeah, I have that feeling always when I go to I don't know, like yeah, even Argentina sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, I felt it in Buenos Aires at night, and I don't feel that here in Paraguay. That said, like everywhere, it depends where you are. There's suburbs in Paraguay. I wouldn't go in the middle of the night. It'd be stupid
Yeah.
to. But the general, the new development area is completely safe.
Yeah, that sounds good. And the fact that it's one of the safest countries in South America statistically after Uruguay, Uruguay is pretty safe. It can be shady in the night, I would say, but I never felt endangered there, and it's kind of a small place anyway. I think that says a lot. But anyway, I would say as a general rule of thumb, just precaution and don't show off too much. I would say it's just apply common sense, and I guess you should be fine from what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right, great. Thanks a lot, Paul. We unpacked a lot of good stuff today. I hope our audience is going to find it very, very interesting. If someone wants to get in touch with you, how can get in touch with Plan B and the things you're doing?
Yeah, the best way is just to follow us on our Twitter, Plan B Paraguay. That's where we're just showing everything we can about Paraguay and what it's like living here. Plus, it has all our contact details there.
Great, and we'll also leave some links in the description, in the YouTube description here, so we can maybe schedule an appointment or get in touch with our website as well. So we stay in touch with everyone. Thanks a lot, Paul. It was really, really interesting to talk about Paraguay. I felt like I already learned a lot of stuff about it. I didn't know some of the things, most of the stuff I knew, but it was very interesting. And I hope to see you in another show.
Awesome, Andrew. Thanks for having me.